Hello and welcome to the Into the Unknown podcast. I am one of your hosts, Scott East, and this is your other host, Michael Jeffery. I'm recording from my mobile, so I don't know if you'll be able to see both of us at the same time or just when Michael speaks. I'm recording from a Vancouver park where I found some Wi-Fi. So this is a remote recording. This is a field trip. So wherever you are, inviting if you wish for the first few minutes to tune in with us in a centering exercise. And I'm gonna remove my headphones partially as I'm talking, just so I can hear the nature around me. And if you are in a place where you are close to nature, I invite you to also listen in to nature. So, coming in touch with your breath, closing your eyes, opening everything else. Noticing what's happening inside of yourself, your thoughts and emotions, what parts of you are living in the past or the future or the present, and what stories your mind is creating about the present, about the past or the future. For me, I notice I hear some traffic nearby and a generator, and so my mind is creating some stories around that. And see if you can notice if you are in proximity to nature and to man-made creations. See if you can notice both with your senses. So tuning into your senses right now, particularly right now, the sound or the sense of hearing. And notice in a 300, in a spherical way, like all in all directions, all the sounds. What is the loudest sound that you can hear? What about the quietest sound? What's the furthest away sound that you can hear? And what's the closest sound you can hear? Noticing now to the sensation of touch, the clothing on your skin, the temperature of the air. As well, the sense of taste. And the sense of smell. Coming into present moment and your physical experience right now. Inviting you to open your eyes if you have them closed. And scanning your environment, noticing what your eyes are doing. Are they looking around in a strained way? Are they flitting from one object to the next? This can be a sign that you're in fight or flight. Inviting you to become aware of your peripheral vision. What's at the outside of your vision? I call this owl eyes. See if you can become aware of everything on the edges and around you, up and down. Right now, as I'm looking forward, I can see my knees. I can also see the top of the tree. I can see a building over there. This can actually calm your nervous system to become aware of your peripheral vision. And notice as you do all this, what happens on the inside. This is not about trying to make feelings go away. So notice, what are the feelings that you're feeling? What is your inner experience? Become aware of who in you is observing this. Who is the observer of your inner and outer experiences? Because we have a shorter time today for this call, I'm gonna end the exercise there, but you can stay in touch with that question of who is observing right now. And so I hope that I was speaking loud enough for that. Michael, can I see a thumbs up? Was I speaking loud enough for that? Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so getting into this, I want to open it up to you, Michael. You just had an experience before this call, and I want with a bear. You encountered a bear. I'm wondering if you could tell everyone a bit about your experience, and maybe starting from what is the inner experience in your body, emotional, physical, mental, as you, and also tell us what happened.
Sure, thanks. I'm noticing, thanks to your centering exercise, there's a sort of calming of the periphery of my nervous system. Anyway, I sort of noticed a subtle flow of energy in my extremities. And this, like, noticing how the tension in my spine is dissipating and around my gut, but there's still definitely some tension in my spine and my gut. Just before this podcast, I went out to my vehicle, which is parked about 250 meters from my yurt, out on my driveway, to get my headphones. And while I was out there, I had to send a couple texts. So I was leaning against my roommate's van, which was right beside my vehicle, and it's a very tall van, one of these large camper vans that's like 2 stories high. So I was just leaning against that near the back, but on the side, and then I just looked over as this big bear head was like poking around the back of the van, and we looked at each other in the eyes. That lasted for about half a second until both our nervous systems kicked in, and I'm not sure who was more scared. The bear was more scared. I'm not sure, but anyway, he jumped off back across the road and then meandered into the forest while I tried to get in my car, which unfortunately was locked. That was my bear experience this morning. Although it left me a little shook to show up to the podcast on time. To be honest, I had to go poop. That was my physiological reaction of getting my digestion working. But mentally, it's getting me curious. I'm having a lot more animal encounters than I'm used to lately, and some very close ones with wild animals. the place where I'm often actually touching them. Like I had a vole come join me in my sleeping bag yesterday when I was camping. I had like a close encounter with 2 beavers when I was meditating by the water right before I went to bed. Right before that, I had some hummingbirds meet me. Hardly ever see marmots where I live. I had 2 marmots come quite close yesterday. Yeah, and I caught two mice in my yurt yesterday in a bucket. So they're just hanging out in the bucket waiting to get delivered to a place far, far away from my yurt. So that's getting me curious. Is like, what is this just coincidence? Is there some sort of energetic thing that I'm doing that's bringing more animals close into my life? I had this thing a couple of weeks ago where I pulled a pop can off a skunk's head, and that was sort of the start of it. And it kind of got on the internet, and see the local newspaper did a thing on me, and then CBC did a thing on me, and not me,
Yeah,
the skunk.
yeah. I mean, tell everyone. A lot of people haven't heard about this. Go for it.
Okay, so I was driving to work, and this may be where I'll weave in some of my eco-psychology about it, because it's more the energetic of it that gets me really interested. But the physical story is, I'm driving, I see the skunk with a pop can stumbling all over the road, or it's a beer can stuck over the top of his skull. So I stop my car, and I'm like, wow, like my heart's like, I need to save this skunk. Like, poor guy's gonna die. Can't eat, you can't see. And my head's like, dude, he's gonna spray you. Like, you're on your way to work. You work with a really sensitive guy. You're not gonna be able to go to work. Like, it's irresponsible from a social level. But then my heart's like, dude, it's a fucking animal who's gonna die. Like, you need to save it. So kind of went back and forth for a little bit. Had this moment where I committed, I'm gonna save it for sure. I stepped out of my car, and the eagle like swooped down into the lake right in front of me and like grabbed a fish, and I was like, okay, good omen. And then I was like still perplexed about how I was gonna get close enough to like pull this thing off without getting sprayed. And he just kind of like stumbled over like within vicinity of me, within 5 or 6 feet. And I was just like, I knew I had to act like that was the time. So I just kind of jumped in and like pried the can most of the way off its head. And ran, and he was able to shake the can the rest of the way off. And by the time I looked back, I was far enough away where he had tried to spray me, like his tail was up and his butt was facing my direction, but I was too far away for him to actually land on me. So that was that story. That was exciting. I got super stoked, and then it shared on social media, which, people kind of like some happy story news, I realized, in a time of disconnection and separation, and so much challenge. So that was nice. But my deeper reflection, brought to me by some mentors and people I'm working with in the eco-psychology world, is like, what's like the deeper imprint of this, which I've tried to be working on me. So what that looks like is, metaphorically, here is a black and white animal, and this animal has the potential to really stink things up. But what's going on with this animal is it has some sort of manufactured artifact that's, it's for numbing, really. It's also for socializing and connection, but often beer is being used to numb. So it's this human manufactured object that is usually, or often, or maybe just in my life, used to numb. And it's creating this ignorance, this inability to sense and see, and it's actually killing this being, which is black and white. And so my role was to step in and free it from the danger of ignorance. And just earlier in the week, I had found myself advocating for some human rights issues at my work, around trans rights. And there's a bunch of ignorance there, and it was a bit of a challenging thing. I had to confront 3 different bosses. It was like sort of emotional, but it like felt really important to me. And I also live in a very strong anti-vax community.
And you identify yourself as anti-vax? Is that what you mean by? Because when you say I live in a strong anti-vax community, in my language,
Yeah,
if I live in a community, then I share the values of that community. So is that accurate the way you say it?
it was for a while, for maybe up until 2 weeks before this incident. I was not going to get a vaccine. I was wary of letting big pharma, big corporation, government put something inside my body. But I did a lot of deep diving into like where that sort of mentality was coming from, where I was coming up with that perspective, which was very socially influenced by my close people and my tribe, and realized like a bigger mistrust of top-down hierarchical patriarchal control. But the more I looked into it, is like I realized it was coming more from a fear place and not like a rational, like scientific, practical, or even compassionate place. So I found that my center of gravity was just slightly on the side of, I'm going to get a vaccine. This feels like the most compassionate for my community. It's going to keep people safe. It's going to keep myself safe. But more importantly, it's going to poke my my tribe, who is quite polarized around this, into potentially looking at another way. So I decided to get a vaccine, and then that skunk story happened right afterwards. So for me, it was sort of this energetic of like pulling off this like object of manufactured ignorance of the worldview that I was carrying around vaccines, and choosing to like pull it off. That the same idea is like bring that energy to my community, who is thinking similarly in black and white. And it's been really rich. I've had a lot of really rich conversations. It's really sort of helped me realize that, you know, lots of worldviews I'm carrying, and perspectives I'm carrying, are probably actually somewhat ignorant, and it's really more valuable just to take a different perspective. Like there's no right and wrong. There's like gradients of right and wrong, or truth. And you say I have no judgment around people who don't get vaccinated or get vaccinated, but it's just finding my own authentic center. Anyway, sharing a lot of sort of my inner process here of how what the external world is mirroring is somehow related to my inner structure. In this case, pulling can off head of skunk who tries to spray is similar to like pulling off potential perspectives and worldviews off people who are deeply attached and might be emotionally spraying stink at me if I try to help them see a different perspective.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. And I have a few different questions, but I think I want to start with just the basics of, it sounds like you're speaking from this framework or from a worldview, a set of distinctions. I think you called it EcoPsychology, and maybe there's more layers to it than just that one word. But like what I hear you talking, I hear you speaking of these animals in a symbolic way, and your experience in a symbolic way, and that the outer world is somehow a reflection of your inner experience. And I'm wondering if you could share a bit more about how you came to use this framework, or what, because it's not, I think it might not be so obvious for people, and I can definitely relate to parts of it, and I've sort of personally at times in my life had moments where I've done that a lot. I've really looked at the outside, at animals or things that have happened to me as symbolically, but I don't think I have the same depth of practice around it right now as you do. So I think the at the heart of it, it's really like, how did you come to really choose this as being a core aspect of who how you are in the world?
Mm,
Yeah.
thanks. That's a big question. There's actually sort of three parts I see in there. So I'd say my journey to psychology was, or eco-psychology, was a lot of just deep questioning around my purpose in life, and like, why do humans exist? Why are humans here? Like, how do I be a good human? How do I be in right relationship in the world? And I spent a lot of time like spiritually searching before that. I was a monk in Asia, and I like participated in as many different like sort of spiritual tradition practices that I could get invited to. And I was just consistently seeking. And one of these seekings, I went to sit in a cave in the Himalayas for a couple weeks, and I sort of had this vision come through about stop seeking all these different spiritual paths, but like go back and into Western culture and be more useful, instead of like living on the far edge of society. Like give some gifts back, and how that came through was by becoming a wilderness therapist. So in my search for a mentorship program, with that, I came across a man who'd been studying with the Animas Valley Institute. His name's Bernard LaPlante, mentor of mine. So he introduced me to Bill Plotkin's work, and it really got me. There's something in the structure of the maps that Bill Plotkin has made that just sort of really were nourishing some part of my being that I couldn't find holding for in other places. It's just deeply, deeply resonated with me. Um, so that's kind of how I got to that. And this sort of like symbolic, like mirroring of nature is not actually at the core of Bill Plotkin's work. It's more of an animist worldview, which I think goes much deeper than this idea of projecting what's going on in my inner world on a skunk or bear or any sort of animal. A deeper truth for me is that they all have their own sentience and intelligence, and like deep autonomous spiritual truth that I can communicate with, which requires more deeper practice than random animal encounters. And that practice also, I think, helps me be more open to more animal encounters. And I think where this mirroring is coming is more from my therapeutic practice, and also my men's work. You've also been involved in MKP, so there's this sort of projection practice, which also fits in my cosmology of everything is just a reflection of consciousness, and I have a particular way of seeing it. So
Can you explain that a little bit, like the reflection thing? Because I
yeah,
get it. I don't think other people. Yeah.
so I'll give an example that happened. I had a really good conversation with my roommate yesterday, who I find myself getting triggered around not completing projects that she said she'd do with me on time, engaging in social, fun, connective conversation, often when there's actually work to be done around the place, kind of blocking it and mistrusting people who would actually be really supportive in helping me get my eco village built a bit faster. And I was getting really triggered around these things. and it like I was getting angry. I was like found myself yelling in my car a couple days ago after an encounter. Um, but after spending some time with it, I realized behind all this is like I'm just projecting my own sabotage of getting things done, my own like putting my social fun connections ahead of getting the work done in the physical world, my own not completing my tasks on time. And so it, my anger and my trigger is not really about her at all. She was just the mirror that was reflecting these things that were in my own shadow. Um, so that's what I mean by that sort of projection work. It's like what's going on is all that I can see really is my own experience, and the way I can see it best is by looking at others and noticing where exciting or shimmery or triggering things happen. That helps me see what's going on in my shadows. That helps me see what's going on internally. So this is sort of what was happening with the skunk, with the bear. Is like, it's like there's my own inner experience of like, how am I showing up energetically in the world right now? Um, and I can kind of project it on that situation and learn a bit more about myself.
Yeah, thank you. I'm I'm putting myself in the shoes of people listening to this, and I'm thinking like, okay, well, what kind of questions would they have around this? And one of the things that comes up for me is, I mean, I can create any kind of story about anything. Like, like I'm sitting in front of a tree, but like, why is this like? Why would this tree, this particular tree, be like something of symbolic significance, like rather than just a random part of this universe? Like, there's a fence here. There's a like 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 a bird's just a bird. Like come on, man. A bird's just a
Hmm.
bird. A skunk's just a skunk. A can's just a can. These things have no meaning, like unless I give it meaning. So uh, do you see this as like for you some kind like a kind of like you're interfacing with kind of ultimate reality, or it's or like are your interpretations and your conclusions that you come to, do they resonate in you as a kind of base truth about things, or like how do you what's it like for you, or is it just uh, is this a subjective experience and it's okay for it to just be a subjective experience? Like, I feel like there's some deeper question here, like how does this empower you, and how much of that is choice, or how much of this is choice, and how much of this is like something bigger than you? Or that's a bunch of questions, but I'm wondering if that's enough to kind of stimulate a deeper inquiry.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So I'm kind of rooted in a quite phenomenological ontology. So I, another way to say this from academic stance is from like I'm like a postmodernist way of looking at things, which is deeply subjective. In that, like everything that everyone experiences is quite subjective. That in these human vessels, we don't have capacity to understand a fully objective truth. Um, Everything we experience, we can only experience either with our bodies and our senses and our minds, or through the tools that we use to measure objective reality, but then we're perceiving it through our subjective bodies. So everything in a sense is subjective, at least from the perspective of a human. So we can't really experience an objective truth. Um, I might argue you could perhaps do that in a deep spiritual practice, maybe understanding a deep objective truth of everything is consistently shifting and changing. Um, but like my belief is that humans are meaning making machines, and it's more about like refining my meaning making capacities. And modern culture is really good at making meaning cognitively and intellectually. And these practices sort of help bring those into other domains, more into the emotional domain, more in the imaginal domain, more in the sensory domain. So a bit of it's like amplifying that. So like I'd ask you, Scott, like you're sitting in this spot, you have this tree behind you, you have this fence, I see the sunshine behind you. Like if you just drop into your like emotional inner sensory world right now, like what do you notice? What stands out the most? What shimmers or sparkles the most, or perhaps repels you? What has the most emotional tone?
Is this about what I'm seeing, or
Could be seeing or feeling, could be a inner sensation, could be emotion that's evoked from something, but something of how the external world is relating to your internal world.
the biggest thing that my attention is on right now is this conversation, and the I have a kind of, there's a, relating to that is a kind of energetic, feels kind of like a fire in my belly, and I feel happy about that we're exploring this, and I think like peeling back layers and
Tell me about the nature of that fire. I'm curious about
yeah,
how
the
you're
nature.
experiencing that fire.
It's as though like it's possible for me when I think of me, I don't know. There's this, me can mean a lot of things. What is my identity? I don't know. But sometimes my attention is really scattered to the edges of the world. I'm thinking of 1,000 things at once. But this fire is, it's like if I were in an open field at night and it was dark and I was kind of wandering around lost. Uh, that would be a very kind of disorienting experience, especially if it was cold and wet and I didn't have my bearings towards home or safety of any kind. But if suddenly I saw like a fire out in the middle of the field spark up, I would turn towards that and I would walk towards it, and I'd be so like grateful to see that. And right now inside of myself, it's in my belly, there's fire similar, and it feels like that is what this conversation is for me. Like it has a similar kind of value where I'm drawn to it. And it's, I mean, I would certainly prefer to be with you in person, but being able to be with you and like being in nature, finding this little sanctuary in the midst of the city where, yeah, it feels like these trees that somehow energetically I feel connected to these trees, like they're celebrating with me, or I'm, maybe not that they're celebrating with me, but just I'm close to their vibration as I'm celebrating. And some, I just feel really close to you, and to this. Yeah, I think that's enough right now.
Great. I'm curious, like, so you're in this celebration with the trees and you have this fire inside, like how do you want to be in that celebration? How, like, and maybe how close do you want to be to that fire? Like, how do you want to engage with it? Do you want to roast a hot dog on it? Do you want to have a dance party around it? Just want to sit down and warm your back?
I feel some fear and some happiness hearing that, because what this fire represents to me symbolically is being close to myself and being close to the mystery of life. But I think in a way it's simpler, it's easier for me to be comfortably numb if I interpret the world as being just this dead thing that has like, it's just a bunch of separate things that are mechanical. And like if I start to interpret things symbolically, it's scary because it brings the earth to life, and suddenly I'm a part of it. And so with the fire, it's like one part of me wants to be closer to it, interacting with it, sort of poking it, moving things around, and one part of me wants to just sit back and let others do that.
Mm.
And I'm noticing that, yeah, so this is definitely a symbol for my life right now, because one part of me wants to sit back, one part of me wants to tend the fire in my life right now. I've been noticing a lot of parts of my life where I'm frozen right now. I'm not acting on things. I like have an idea to do something, and then I just like, nah, I don't want to do that. Like in a way that symbolically relates to the idea of like stoking a fire. And a part of me would just prefer others to do that. But then there's a different kind of pain that comes in when I imagine just not being a part of it. And I'm really torn right now around this. Around like, what do I really want to do? And I'm like, I'm terrified of like making mistakes. Making mistakes. Like,
Could I invite a distinction here?
Yeah.
That maybe support. So when I was talking about EcoPsychology before, we were talking about there's this place of like projecting symbols onto nature. In this case, maybe we can use this like fire that you're actually feeling somatically in your belly as a symbol that you can project something onto, or this deeper, or the a worldview that I'm more interested in, which is seeing the world as animate, so that everything is imbued with its own spirit. So we can look at the fire as just a symbol, which is in a way just a representation of the energy, compared to something that actually has its own consciousness. And the way that we interact with anything will change very much. So my invitation to you would be like, maybe instead of, or if you just want to try this on for a moment, instead of looking at the fire symbolically, go to the fire as if it was maybe a person, and you could ask it like, what do you need? Like, what are you about? Like, what is your spirit desire? Like, what do you know about how we can interact?
Yeah. What do you know about how we can interact? I'm just aware, like, as soon as I asked that question, I become aware of, like, the message is kind of like, man, chill out. There's just like fires need to be tended. Like if like there's just so much that I as a fire am just doing on my own. Like pulling a lot of weight here. I'm burning myself.
Mm.
You don't have to do anything. You don't have to. You can be aware of me here as I'm burning, and we can just be together too. I'll let you know if I need anything. You just have to watch me. I'll let you know. I'll roll over if I need you to like tend to me. Like,
What's that evoke as you have that?
just yeah, I have this kind of this joy wash over me. Like it confirms a kind of intuition that I've been having. But which is in contrast to my patriarchal upbringings that say the script that says if I'm not doing something, then I'm not valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm learning to tend my inner flame. And so yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, there's still like sadness coming up too, because there's layers. It's just yeah.
There's always layers. There's always more and more layers.
Yeah, true.
Infinite onion of life.
Or thanks for leading me through that, and got just a couple more minutes before the time that we agreed upon ending. So anything else to wrap this up or to transition?
Yeah, well, I just want to thank you for indulging me in that. And also, it's like that's a bit abstract in a sense. We're working with a sensation of which came with an image that your psyche created around fire, and we're imbuing that with spirit to converse with. So it's a sort of abstracted version of animism. I like to work with it in a much more like physical material world way, like speaking with the tree behind you, for instance, something that's external and very physical. Both work. An animist perspective suggests that even our words and our language are imbued with spirit. Our thoughts sort of have their own consciousness, passing, very temporary, but they all sort of have their own sort of intelligence.
It's interesting. I went there because my in possibility management there's basically none of that. I don't know if that's 100% true. This is a bridge that I really want to gap. I want to bridge this gap with possibility management. So I hope we can do this again, but like another kind of demonstration for people, but with the outside world.
Yeah, I'd love to. Great. So I'm feeling grateful for our chat, and I feel a little sad that I didn't get any cult leadership skills from you there. which you had
Any,
planted a seed of teaching me at the start.
yeah, no. People aren't going to get that because they didn't refer to that conversation. That's okay. If just to plant a seed, everyone, I recommend you go onto Netflix, and there's this documentary series called Explained, and there's a episode about cults. I just watched it last night. And I recommend watching it because I think that there's a lot of examples of cultural movements that have been led basically by sociopaths, and now there's I think a lot of hesitancy and a lot of people around, well, I don't want to become a part of a cult, so I'll just stay with the mainstream, like as though the only other option of the mainstream is like a sociopathic cult. And so I want to explore that in a future episode, is just like those distinctions, and like how do we actually, because I think honestly everyone's susceptible to it. Like it's important to build skills and perspectives around what is a healthy alternative culture and what is a sociopathic. Or anyway, I don't want to, we don't have time to open that door right now, but just to plant that seed. And as we're at the very end, I want to say to everyone, thanks again for coming. And for now, please reach out with questions. Let us know if you want to donate money to this cause. I think eventually we'll like make a Patreon or something like that. For now, you can go into the show notes and just donate via PayPal. But for now, the podcasts, the audio hosting platform that we use, Podbean, we just reached our limit for free audio upload. So if you want audio access to this, then we're going to need like a little bit of donation from our listeners. I think it's like $10 a month. So once we hit that bar consistently at $10 a month, then we'll put that into getting the audio out again. And we'd be grateful for anything in addition to that. So that's, yeah, reach out if this is touching you. Reach out if you know. We love your encouragement. Anything else?
That's it. I'm gonna watch the cult movie this week. I'm looking forward to jamming next week.
You're gonna watch the cult documentary?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yes. Yeah, there's like they have this list of like steps to indoctrination, sort of like how to have a sense of like, these are sort of the patterns that people have, because they interviewed a bunch of people who've escaped cults, and they distilled a kind of pattern that is common. And I was looking at it, I was like, oh man, a lot of these things sound like really shadowy, shady versions of what I do to try and invite people into a different perspective. I'm like, okay. So I look forward to exploring that and the edges of what we do.
Awesome. Love you, man. See you next week.
Sounds good.